good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mihir Joshi. This is the MJ Show, and we are about to kick off another episode. And tonight, man, you won't believe the amount of time it took me to just go through all the incredible work that my guest today has done. Okay, now we are stable, no more movement. All right, here we go. So, as I was saying, my guest for tonight has done so much. It is absolutely incredible. But if I did not speak about a single thing that he has done, like of all the myriad things that he's done, and if I told you just one fact, that is a few years ago he won a Grammy Award for his 14th studio album. That's right, 14th studio album. That itself is enough to define the incredible work and career of this man. But there is, like I said, a lot more, and we're going to find out about that today right here on the MJ Show. So let's welcome on the MJ Show Ricky Cage. Alright, let's get him on. Hi Ricky, how are you?
Hey Mihir, so glad to be on your show.
Hey, good to have you here, man. This was a long time coming. I remember us meeting almost 5 or 6 years ago. I think the year that you just won the Grammy Award and you'd come back, and I think we bumped into each other at the Mirchi Music Awards, right?
Exactly, we bumped into each other at the Mirchi Music Awards, and then later on we even we had a brief meeting at, I think, Hard Rock Cafe also, I think. I'm not sure.
That's right. So incidentally, on the same night that the Mirchi Music Awards were happening, my band was performing at Hard Rock Cafe. So I finished my gig and I had come over. That's how we met. But man, it's phenomenal. Firstly, like I told you that day when we first met, and like I said in my introduction today, it's such an incredible honor. It's such a great thing that you are one of the very few people. I think we can count on two hands the number of people who won Grammy Awards from India. I think Pandit Ravishankar has won quite a few. I think Zakir Hussain has won, I think, one or two. You are one of the few other people, like Pandit Vishwa Mohan Bhatt. But I can't think of too many people who have actually won a Grammy Award for their music here from India. And you are one of those people. So, congratulations on that, and congratulations on the incredible career that you've already had so far. And now that I've finished my monologue, let's begin.
No, thank you so much. There are only, including me, there are only 4 people who have actually won the Grammy Award in India. As you mentioned, Pandit Ravishankar, then there is Pandit Vishwa Mohan Bhatt, then there is A.R. Rahman, and there is me. Yeah. So just the 4 of us.
That's right. So that is amazing, man. And so you're in a very, very small group of really, really phenomenal artists who've done something which the entire world strives for. You know what I mean? While there are a ton of music awards all across the world and in India, the most prestigious of them all is without a doubt the Grammy Award. And you won it for your album in what was this, 2014? Was it?
It was released in 2014, but I won the award in 2015.
15, that's right. 2015 is when you won it. So, before we get into that album, which, as I mentioned in my introduction, was your 14th album, let's do what I always do when somebody comes on my show for the first time, which is I like to find out what I call the origin story of the artist. So I want to know how and what got you into music to begin with. I mean, because I read that wasn't your intended, or that wasn't your first choice as such, right? I mean, you were studying something else and then you got into music, right?
Actually, Mihir, your voice is coming a little garbled. I think some kind of a digital noise. Should we just log in once again? I'm not sure what's happening actually. I think
okay, let me add you back again. Hold on. All right, let's get Ricky Cage back in once again. He's going to have to join my conversation though. And that's when we can get him back on. Come on in. I'm going to send him a message. And he's back. All right, so let's add him in. Hopefully this time the internet will be nicer to us. I think I've got my fan also not too loud. Hopefully you should be able to hear me this time. Can you hear me better now?
Oh, it's the same problem, I guess. But we'll manage. I'll be able to hear what you're saying, yeah.
All right. So what I was saying is that, before we talk about the album, your 14th album and then your 15th album. Let's go back to the beginning. How did your journey into music begin? I know this is something you may have answered multiple times, but this is what I call the origin story. So, even if you've said it multiple times in multiple interviews, I'd like to know what got you into music to begin with.
So I've always been a musician my whole life, and I've been an environmentalist, two pillars that have pretty much dictated my life and all of my life decisions. And, I've always been obsessed with music, even while I was not playing music, while I was very young, maybe in my second grade or third grade. For some reason, I was always obsessed with music. While my friends were always watching television and cartoons and video games, the center of my universe was always my music system. And I believe that a whole lot of my education has been through music, because I would listen to music from different parts of the world, understand different cultures, understand about different instruments, understand about history of various countries, about the Great Depression, about Indian history and things like that. And, growing up, when I was in my 12th grade, that is when, you have to make a very strong decision as to what you want to do for the rest of your life. So I had made a very strong decision that, that I want to be a musician and a professional musician. And I wanted to do music for the rest of my life. And my father, who was the third generation doctor, he was very, very against the idea. And we had a lot of fights and a lot of pushing and pulling, a lot of heartache at home and a lot of drama. And at the end of it, we reached a compromise that I would finish off a degree in dental surgery. And once I finish off that degree, my life is my own and my parents will never question me again. So that's exactly what I did. I went to 5 years of dental college. In the evenings, I was doing professional music. So my professional career had already started in college. I was already doing jingles and commercials and things like that. And then at the end of it, at the end of 5 years, I did not know anything in dentistry, but I got a degree. So, which is pretty much a testimony to the education system. And I gave the degree certificate to my father, and I told him that you can keep this. And after that, instead of 5 p.m. to night being a musician, I became a musician from morning to evening, And and then, as they say, there was no looking back after that.
And that is fantastic. And you know what? I just realized that I really connect with you on this, because 17 years ago, I finished my engineering and I had no intention of ever being an engineer. But again, coming from a family where everybody's either a doctor, engineer, or whatever else, I was also told that, hey, finish off, get a degree, and then do whatever you want to do. So I did that, 4 years, finished. And I have literally said that very line that you just did, where I finished my degree, I gave my certificate to my parents, and then I said, now I got to follow my heart, and I got into music. And I realized that I think you and I are pretty much the same age. So I guess growing up, the kind of music that you heard here, you were in India, right? You were born and brought up in India?
I was born in America, but I moved to India when I was 8 years old. So I've pretty much been in India life. So we have been listening to the same music, I guess.
Same kind of music, I guess. So, but who were your early influences? What was the kind of music that was influencing you as a musician? As in, this is the kind of music I'd like to make.
So I guess a lot of musicians have inspired me along the way, but not through their music, but through, the way that they have led their careers and the way that they've led their lives. Like, for example, one of my first influences when it comes to world music was Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. So I remember listening to him for the first time when I was in I think the 7th or 8th grade. Till then I was only listening to a lot of pop music and a lot of Western pop music and of course Indian film music and things like that. And even Indian independent music. But I remember listening to that, and he had released an album with Peter Gabriel called Night Song at that particular point in time. And I listened to that and on headphones, I remember that moment so clearly that I'm listening to the music and I'm getting tears rolled down my eyes. And I'm wondering that, I'm not feeling sad, I'm not feeling depressed, but why am I feeling so overwhelmed? And then I realized that this music has just got me so overwhelmed with emotions that I'm not able to control my emotions, And right. And I realized that this is the exact same feeling that I want to bring about with other people, And that's why I really felt that, I need to be a musician. And then, of course, another Pakistani band, that is Junoon. I remember Junoon had released their album and they had come out with a song called Sayoni, which had come on the CA Music Awards, which was, that really, I remember watching that performance and I was blown away by that performance, because it was not only the same kind of vocals that I heard with Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, but also with an electric guitar and a bass guitar and drums, And then I'm like, wow, these people do not care about that, that you have to make a rock song or you have to make a pop song or a Sufi song. They just want to make a good song, and
Yeah.
they don't care what instrumentation goes into it. And then I realized that, wow, the world is your playground, and that is how I got into the realm of world music and this interest in understanding cultures, understanding people, understanding political backgrounds and all of that stuff, and bringing all of that into music.
So tell me, why is the word world music used for this music? Because what I mean by that is I understand the concept that it encompasses music of all different sorts of cultures, different countries, and all of that. But as far as you are concerned, if you make music here in India, isn't your music Indian music, which is now going out to the world? Or like you said, when you heard Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, wasn't it Pakistani? Because it was the popular music, or at least the kind of pop music of that country, or the more, when I say pop music, I don't mean the word the way it is used, but it was the popular music of that country. So why is a specific kind of music, which is maybe pop music or maybe folk music in a country, when do you get to be classified as world music? What is required for that?
So world music is actually quite a vague term. What I believe, in a more technical way, that every country has got their mainstream music and they've got their own world music. Like, for example, in America, Bollywood music would be considered world music in America, in a country like America, or a country like, let's say, Switzerland. Whereas in India, Bollywood music would be considered the mainstream music, but as soon as you bring in any kind of traditional elements into it, like, sitars, and you do not have too much of the electronics and things like that, and if it's not part of a film, then that is considered to be world music. So, like, I would say that, like, let's say a Sanji Leela Bansali movie, like, let's say a film like Devdas. If the music of Devdas was not part of a film, I think that would be classified as world music within India too. So, so I guess it's just a technical classification, and of course genres are just in the sense that at least I use genre names only for classifying in terms of marketing. That's about it. I do not consider myself to be a world musician, but I think genre classifications are important, because you need to understand how to market your music, and you need to know how to slot your music into a certain group to market it. So I think from a marketing standpoint of view, it's very important to classify your music, because I get quite annoyed when people tell me that my music is not any genre, or my music is completely unique. Then I'm like, you need to classify it somewhere,
That's why, I know it was a very tangential question, but I want to know, because I've always been very curious, because when I've heard world music and I've heard various albums by various people, everything like African music is world music, and traditional sounds from, say, Ethiopia or Afghanistan or Pakistan, everything gets classified as world music. So I want to kind of understand how you look at it, but that's a very interesting way of looking at it.
But I guess another thing to add to your point is that when I talk to people about world music, it's always I classify it as Indian infused world music. So the thing is that so basically everybody needs to put in, like, because when it's world music, I believe that you need to have some kind of a geographical reference, in the sense that when you listen to the music, you know, like, vaguely from which region it comes from, but yet it is a mixture of various genres. But your primary influence has to be from one country. So my primary influence is always India.
Brilliant. So, you know what, let's now talk about some of the important milestones in your musical journey before the Grammy Award. What would you define as some of, like, you released 13 albums before Winds of Samsara, which, eventually got you to the Grammy Awards. We'll get to that in a bit, but tell me about some of the more interesting moments, some interesting anecdotes from your time before that, before making that album.
So I can tell you an interesting experience that I had. I've done a whole lot of albums in the beginning of my career with Universal Music in the USA. And so that has been because most people say working with a major label is, like, difficult or whatever, but I had a largely enjoyable experience working with Universal Music. I'd done, I think, close to about 8 albums with them. And so this, one of the first few albums that I did with them was, they briefed me that, that we want some sort of a loungy Buddha bar kind of a feel, and we want that kind of an album. And I said that that's exactly the kind of music that I make. So, and that I love making. So they said that they wanted to be like Indian music with like, with down tempo grooves and, with a lot of electronics and pads and things like that. So I recorded a whole bunch of amazing classical musicians and I composed some beautiful classical pieces for this album. And I wrote this whole thing about like, I called the album Indian Lounge, and I wrote spiel about every single song and for the inlay card, and about every single instrument and what is the ethnicity of each instrument. So I worked really hard on that, and I sent them the album. And during those days, around 2002, 2003, there was not much of an internet. So what happened is that they would send me like a box of CDs, when it releases, for me to distribute among my friends, because the albums were not released in India. And they sent me the box of CDs and the CD, and I was shocked. I'm like, this is not my album. And the album was called Kama Sutra Lounge. Okay. And I'm like, this is not my album. And I open, and my name is not on the cover. And I open up the album and I see that like it's all song titles that were not mine. All the song titles were based on positions, and they're not mine. And then I look at the credits and I see my name on there as the composer and producer. Immediately I put the CD into my CD player and I realized it's my music. And then basically they changed every single song title. They wrote a complete booklet on how each song is relevant to each position. but I'm not complaining. But I'm not complaining because that till date is my most successful album. And in fact, even now, when I look at my royalties from radio, especially terrestrial FM radio in America, I make 3 times the amount of money from that album than my Grammy-winning album.
You know what? I'm glad you brought this up, because I was looking at your discography and I was like, okay, your first album is called Communicative Art, your second album is called Kama Sutra Lounge, and then there is another album called Kama Sutra Lounge Part 2. And I was like, what's the story behind that?
No, after the success of the first album, I was okay with doing a Part 2 and a Part 3.
That's brilliant. So for everybody wondering, I'm sure you can go on Spotify or on Apple Music or any streaming platform, and you can check out some of his earlier work as well. I know everybody, here's the thing. In India especially, success which is got abroad helps recognition in a massive way within our country. You could be doing incredible work here in India and people will not notice it or not really know about it until you find success elsewhere and then come back. It's a very strange phenomenon, but that's how I've seen a lot of artists find success here in India when they should be able to find it. Like you said, your first many albums, you did not release them in India. I mean, I think you also saw the logic of releasing the music abroad. I mean, maybe you probably thought they don't sell in India, people don't really buy physical CDs, while probably they do. Was that your reason behind it, by the way?
No, so the thing is that what you said is absolutely right about success in India and success abroad. Now, this is what I call personally what I call the Pandit Ravishankar syndrome. Now, the thing is that, so basically, if you look at Pandit Ravishankar, who is one of the greatest influences in my life, everybody knows him as being one of the greatest musicians ever in the history of Indian music. And Bharat Ratna winner, everybody know him as that. Everybody knows that he's got a daughter, Anushka Shankar. He's got another daughter, that is Nora Jones. Everybody knows about his life. But you ask anybody on the street, people even know who he is. You ask anybody on the street, name one song of his or name one album of his. Absolutely nobody knows. Or you ask anybody, hum a tune of his. Nobody knows. So everybody know him as a personality, but nobody listens to his music. And whereas when you go abroad, let's say when he was alive, when you went to San Francisco and he did a show over there, or a show at Carnegie Hall, or a show at the Disney Hall, or whatever, about 95% of the audience is an American audience. That is a complete foreign audience, and hardly any Indian audience. So he basically is one of the very few musicians, or I would say classical musicians are the musicians who've actually broken cultural barriers. And they are basically reaching out to foreign populations and not just the Indian diaspora. Even my concerts, like, for example, the last concert I did in America I do about 12 to 13 concerts a year over there. And my last concert was in September at Central Park. We had about 10 or 15,000 people at that particular concert. And it was, again, a complete foreigner audience. Now, whereas if you look at Bollywood, everybody say that it's popular all over the world. Of course, there are cases where it's broken cultural barriers, but by and large, when a Bollywood artist does a show anywhere outside of India, it is mainly the Indian diaspora who attends the show. So
Correct.
it hasn't actually broken cultural barriers by and large, but the thing is that it's just reaching out to an Indian diaspora, but that's good enough because the Indian diaspora itself is huge. It's about 250 million people all over the world. So if you're only catering to them, you are still catering to a world audience because it's all over the world. But what I'm saying is that Bollywood music has not actually broken cultural barriers in the same way as classical music has broken cultural barriers. Classical music, like I've been to a Pandit Vishwamohan Bhatt show in North Carolina. And I was shocked that the audience was completely, an American audience, and he was playing with just a tanpura, and that is one of the electronic tanpuras and his Mohan Veena. That's all he was playing, and he gripped the audience for 2 hours. So that is what I believe is breaking cultural barriers.
No, I think that's phenomenal. In the same space, I think right now, as a classical musician doing some amazing content and concerts in the US, there is, I don't know if you know of him, Mahesh Kade, who is a phenomenal singer, classical singer, and he's doing the same thing. But he's based in the US. He's living in the US. And he's performing in the Bay Area and all across the world, actually, not just in the US. But he stays in the Bay Area and he does a lot of stuff over there. And it's great to see that. I've always believed that we've got the music which can capture the attention of audiences from all across the world. Evidently, Bollywood has not done that. While we consider it to be India's pop music, which is without a doubt the case, it's not been able to translate the same way, say, a Spanish song by Shakira or an Enrique Iglesias or a Ricky Martin have been able to do in an Indian perspective. Not just India, but all across the world.
No, I think you've pretty much nailed it over there, because the correct comparisons of Bollywood needs to be with people like Shakira, Enrique Iglesias, Gloria Estefan, people who have actually created pop music within their own countries and have broken cultural barriers and reached worldwide. Because I think these are the best examples that you mentioned, actually. Julio Iglesias, Enrique Iglesias, Shakira, Sepultura, for example.
From Brazil. And more recently, the Korean pop phenomenon, Korean singers, Psy, who did the Gangnam Style thing, and then the BTS and all of these guys, for them to be able to translate, and for kids in India to know Korean songs without really understanding the language, but really vibing with that, with the culture, with the look, with the songs, with the feel, which is, it's amazing. And I think from India, the only way that Indian music can gain that kind of acceptability worldwide is through the kind of things that you are doing, where you're taking Indian rooted music and you're making it more acceptable to the world. And I think classical music can be that one medium. And I believe classical music, but treated in a more world environment, in a more modern environment, is the kind of music that can really translate to any country, where they don't need to know the words, but they can still feel it and they can really vibe with the music.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you, because that's the thing about Indian classical music, because Indian classical music is all based on emotions, and there's a lot of feel in it. So it's easier to communicate with people through that. And also another very important thing is that classical music lends itself beautifully to collaborating with jazz musicians. So that's why you have the most beautiful jazz and Indian classical music combinations like Shakti and Tabla Beat Science, and so many of these beautiful collaborations, and because classical music is a very improvisational form, jazz is a very improvisational form. So that way it works beautifully. And then you have people like Anushka Shankar, who have beautifully brought Indian classical music along with Western classical music, with her collaborations with Zubin Mehta, where, because she's a part of both worlds, because she was brought up, at least I believe that, since she was brought up in the West. The thing about her is that she's got the discipline of Western classical music, where she rehearses and she practices, and yet she has the feel of Indian classical music. So she can actually play with orchestras, because it's very rare for an Indian classical musician to play a piece of music and then replicate that exact same piece of music again, Like, for example, I've done about 40, 50 concerts with Pandit Vishwamohan Bhatt, where he was part of my ensemble and part of my band. And he keeps telling me that, Ricky, if I play a piece, don't ask me to repeat the same thing, because it will never come out the same again, So, but that is the beauty of playing with him, That is the beauty of playing with him, that, many times when I'm performing with him on stage and I'm playing the keyboard and he's playing a solo, And and then he does something so amazing that I just forget what I'm playing, and I just stand up and I'm like, I just want to watch him on stage, and I genuinely do a wow on the mic, that was amazing, like as if I'm part of the audience,
Man, that's astounding. But I'm sure you've had some incredible experiences. I mean, I saw the album that you produced with Peter Gabriel, which had some unbelievable musicians as a part of it. In your own album, the recent one that you've done, you had 300 people, artists who took part in some form or the other in your album, including Amitabh Bachchan and so many incredible names from all across the world. Share a few stories about some interesting experiences you've had with people that you would normally not have imagined collaborating with during your musical journey.
No, it is amazing actually, because the album that you mentioned, of course, the Peter Gabriel album, it's an album called To Unite All. So that particular album I created along with Peter Gabriel for emergency medical and surgical supplies for people affected in the Gaza conflict. So that was of course, I did not get to meet Peter Gabriel, but we interacted online, on email, on phone, and all of that stuff. And it was an amazing, amazing experience just being on the same album with him. And I'm very grateful that he eventually credited me as a producer of the album, which was very generous of him, and that shows that the kind of personality that Peter Gabriel is as a person. And the album was hugely successful. We had Sergey Tank from System of a Down on it. We had Roger Waters on the album. We had Rick Allen, the drummer from Def Leppard. We had a bunch of other musicians on that album. And the second one that he spoke about is an album called Shanti Samsara, which I created and composed. And that album had 500 musicians from 40 countries. It was created for so I'm basically a goodwill ambassador with the United Nations. So that album was created as it was created for the climate change conference, which happened in Paris in 2015, which was the biggest ever conference of nations in the world. 195 world leaders came together to understand what are the problems with climate change, what are the problems with carbon emissions, and how do we together, 195 countries come together and pass a resolution to ensure that the future for our children and our future generations is intact and it's beautiful. So it is a very powerful conference. A lot of good things came out of that. So the album was created for that particular album. So as you mentioned, in India in particular, because the audience over here is Indian, so I had a great experience working with Mr. Amitabh Bachchan. So I contacted him out of the blue, and I requested him, would you like to be a part of this album? And immediately said yes, and he gave me a date for the very next day. So I had to immediately fly to Mumbai, and and he had to recite some Sanskrit. So he asked me then that, that do you have a language person, to supervise the Sanskrit? And I said, yeah, I've got a guy to help us out with it. So then we recorded at Yashraj Studios. He came promptly on time. He told me it's 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock sharp, he was there in the evening. And then he had some other people also waiting. He just walked into the studio and he said, who's Ricky among y'all? So then I said, me. So then he's like, we'll do your thing first. So I said, fine. And then he went into the booth and he went on giving me takes till I said yes. So almost for about 20-30 minutes, he kept giving me takes. And then at the end of it, I told him we have what we need. So he said, play it back to me. So I said, no, different lines are in different takes, so I'll need to edit it, but I know I've got everything. So then he said, no, tum ghabra jaoge edit karke. So he's like, let me give you one take, which is perfect from beginning to end. So I said, fine. Then for another 20 minutes, he gave me takes, and then we got one take, which is perfect from beginning to end, and then that is how we ended the recording.
Man, such an amazing story. I love that. I've got goosebumps right now listening to that story because, there are such incredible stories that you get to hear about these legendary actors, performers, singers, and most often you think these are myths, like ye nahi ho sakta hai, this is not possible, who does shit like this? But then when you hear it from somebody who's experienced it firsthand, it's just phenomenal, man. It's unbelievable, the kind of professionalism and the kind of sincerity that the gentleman has at the age that he is, at the point where he doesn't really need to do anything and he still would be a legend amongst everybody in the country. It's just phenomenal. That was incredible. So this Shanti Samsara, of course, was I believe it was the last album that you released, or did you release something?
No, after that I've released a couple of them. I released another album called Shiva. So that album was an interesting album because what we did was that I did a live concert in Chennai at the Nehru Stadium to an audience, to a completely sold out audience of 7,000 people. And it was one of the greatest experiences I ever had with a concert, because we had a 300-member children's choir, we had a 40-piece orchestra, we had I flew down musicians from 6 different countries. We had 6 Grammy Award winners from 6 countries come down for the concert to perform with us. And the whole concert was basically using Lord Shiva as a metaphor for coexistence with the environment. Because if you look at Lord Shiva as a entity, because I'm actually an atheist, full disclosure, I'm a complete atheist, but I started studying about Shiva and I realized that if you look at Shiva as a person, he's got like the river Ganga flowing out of his hair. He's got the crescent on his forehead. He's blue because that represents sky and water. He rides on a rat. His son is an elephant. So he's got tiger skin. So basically, he's pretty much an embodiment of coexistence and of the elements of nature. So we created completely brand new music on Shiva and coexistence and how we need to live in coexistence with our environment for our own survival. And we created this music. So that live concert became into a live album, and it was quite successful. That album also went on to number 3 on the Billboard charts in America, and it was quite successful worldwide. And my latest album is an album called Ek. So what I've done is that I've actually collaborated during the pandemic. I collaborated with a whole, it's called Ek, EK. And during the pandemic, I collaborated with a whole lot of musicians. I did brand new songs with Shankar Mahadevan, with Salim Merchant, with Kailash Kher, with Niti Mohan, Jonita Gandhi, Beni Dayal, Udit Narayan, Aditya Narayan, Khatija Rahman, that is Mr. A. Rahman's daughter, and also with and with some of the musicians that I usually collaborated with, that's Siddhartha Belamanu and Vari Jashri. So we did this amazing album, and we are releasing the songs one by one. So that's what we released a song with Anushka Manchanda just yesterday, and we're going to be this Friday. We're going to be releasing a song with Udit Narayan and Aditya Narayan.
Oh, brilliant! And these songs are being released on your YouTube channel, or are they being released just as audio files? I mean, on
they're available everywhere. So we're releasing them song by song. So we've already released one song with Benny Dayal and Andrea Jeremiah. Then we've released a song with Anushka Manchanda, and now we'll be releasing the song with Udit and Aditya Narayan. So so every week we're releasing a song, and it's releasing across platforms.
So for everybody watching right now, when this video goes up on the YouTube channel of the MJ Show, I'm going to get the link, say like a Spotify link to this album, the new album, Ek, and I'm going to give it to you. And you can follow that link so that, every week when new music comes out and it gets added onto that playlist, you can check that out. And I'm also going to give you a link to the album that we're going to be talking about now. Of course, I'll give you a link to Shanti Samsara as well, but I'm going to talk about something that I've been wanting to talk to him for a very long time. Let's talk about Winds of Samsara. How did the album come about? Because I believe you collaborated with a South African flautist, right? How did that begin? How did that association start off?
So Wouter Kellerman, the South African flute player, I was a huge fan of his music. So the first time I'd watched him perform was he had performed with Shakira at the closing ceremony of the World Cup of the Soccer World Cup when it happened in South Africa. So I'd watched him perform over there, and there itself I realized that what a brilliant flute player he is. And so I got in touch with him online. I searched for his coordinates and I got in touch with him online. And I was very shocked that that a few years before that I did an album, a flute album, a Bansuri album called Mesmerizing Flute. And he had heard that album and he really liked it. And he told me that I'm a huge fan of your music. And we also realized that both of us are going to be in Los Angeles the month after that. So we decided that let's meet up in Los Angeles and figure out how do we work with each other. So we met in Los Angeles, and while we were talking to each other, we came across a huge coincidence that I had just finished making a piece of music on Mahatma Gandhi, that is my father of the nation. And he had just finished making a piece of music on Mandela, who's his father of the nation. And we also realized that there's a lot of cross-pollination over there because Mahatma Gandhi spent his formative years in South Africa, so he had South African.
Nelson Mandela was heavily inspired by the non-violence movement by Mahatma Gandhi, so he had Indianness. So we decided that I'll keep making music and you keep making that music more South African. and you keep making music, and I'll make that music more Indian. And we spent 2.5 years making the album, and at the end of 2.5 years, we had an album ready, and that became Winds of Samsara.
That's phenomenal. So 2.5 years of effort and, exchanging ideas and exchanging thoughts got this album down. And when you put it out, did you expect to find the level of success that it found? It was #1 on the Billboard charts, world music charts for what? Almost 12 weeks, right? Was that something you anticipated happening, or was it a pleasant and unexpected surprise for you?
So the thing is that when we were just having fun making the music, actually, to be honest, for about 2.5 years. And we were just traveling the world together, and we became pretty much the best of friends, actually. And we still talk to each other almost every second or third day. And during that time, I got married. During that time, he became a grandfather. So we had a lot of connection during that particular album, and that album was very dear to us. But I remember there was one instance where we were sitting down in my studio, this studio which I'm sitting down in India, while we were mixing the album. And, while we listened to the whole album at a stretch. And we realized that we do have something good over here. We did, look at each other, and we realized that we've got something beautiful over here. And we really need to put in all the effort to market it. And we need to put in all the effort to make sure as many people listen to it. So both of us made a pact that, for the next 2 years, we're not going to release an album now. We are just going to concentrate on marketing this album, because the minute you release new material, the old material dies, So that is what. So I realized, so that is why we made a pact that we're going to give this album the best light of day, the best chance in the sunlight to actually get out there. So that was an independent album, and it was quite surprising for us that as an independent album, we managed to get on to #1 on the Billboard charts, which is a first for a person of Indian origin and a first for a person of African origin. And we were #1 on the Billboard charts, and we stayed at #1 for 12 weeks. And then we got back to #1 a little later, but we had a continuous run of 12 weeks, which was quite incredible. And we were the #1 radio chart, which is known as ZM radio chart, just like the Billboard of the that you've frozen, I think. Yeah,
we lost you right now. There was a little bit of an internet glitch. The last thing I heard you say is that it was #1 for 12 weeks, and then you just started saying something, and because of the internet, we kind of lost you. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, so basically it had a run of 12 weeks on the Billboard charts, and then we also had a run of 1 month as being #1 on the world radio charts. That is it's basically a chart which is of radio stations that play instrumental music all over the world. So we were #1 on that for a whole month. And and then we won the South African Music Award, we won the Zone Music Reporter Award, we won a whole lot of awards, which culminated in winning the Grammy Award.
For somebody who does not know, for a musician who may dream someday of doing something that you've achieved, how does one submit their music to for consideration at the Grammy Award? Was it something that you needed to do? Was there a label which did it for you? How did that happen?
So the thing is that when it comes to the Grammys, it's just an eligibility period. That's all. So they have an eligibility period, which is basically September to September, if I'm not mistaken. And if your album is released within that eligibility period, then basically your album is entered automatically.
Awesome. Okay, great. And so then, and it is voted on by the Academy members, is it?
I didn't get you.
The way that an album wins, is it voted on by the Academy members? They decide which album.
Yeah, it is voted by the Academy members, but it's a little more complicated than that, because it's first voted by the Academy members, then there is a jury which sifts through that, and then after that there is another voting by the Academy members. So basically it's a foolproof system that way. So it is like by and large Academy members, then after that it goes to a small jury, then after that it goes back to the Academy members.
That's fantastic. I know that I'm fairly certain that people can discover this question answer session by just Googling how does one get a Grammy Award, or what is the process. But I thought, how often do you get to ask somebody who's actually won a Grammy Award what the process is? Because I'm sure he's found that out. So, I just had to ask him over here. But you know what, let's get back to Shanti Samsara. I believe it was our Prime Minister Narendra Modi actually launched the album for you at the United Nations, isn't it?
That's correct. So what happened was that after I won the Grammy Award, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had invited me for for like a small meeting, like a photo op, and to congratulate me. And so I went for the meeting, and the meeting was supposed to be a 10-minute meeting, but it went on for almost an hour because when I started speaking about the environment, and he had already studied quite a bit about me before the meeting. So he knew about my work within the environment and my work with the United Nations. So he spoke a little bit about that. And that is when he told me that he is going to be going for the climate change conference, that is the COP21, which I mentioned where my album was released. And he said that he's going to be giving a keynote speech over there. So we discussed about what would the album be about, and and how would we involve people from all over the world. So we had a huge amount of discussions on that. So then at the end of it, he told me that if you make an album that I really like, then he said that I will launch the album over there on the main stage. So I said, that's amazing. And then I made the album, and I got another appointment with him. I showcased the album to him. He absolutely loved the album, and he said that I'm going to launch it, and I'm going to make sure every single world leader gets a copy of the album. And so he took copies of the album with him. Unfortunately, I could not go because the Paris attacks had just happened a few days before the climate change conference. So, since it was happening in the same city, they had to reduce the number of people that were traveling. So he went with the album. He launched the album along with the French president. And and he gave copies of the album to all the world leaders.
That's incredible, man. I mean, like I said, there are so many phenomenal stories. Very frankly, the one way that I kind of do my research, apart from watching music and listening to the content that my guests do, is to check out the Wikipedia page. I'm telling you, man, I was blown away by the amount of things that you've done, the places that you performed at, and the kind of musicians and artists that you have worked with or who have collaborated with you on your work. And I just want to wish you all the very best, man. I want to keep listening to more music from you. And honestly, I remember when we first met. I mean, I'm going back full circle to the start of our conversation. It was such a joy for me to meet you, and I felt so much pride, and it was incredible because I did not know you, very frankly, and I'll admit, I hadn't heard your music before that. But just the joy of knowing that a musician from India had achieved something which is genuinely the pinnacle of musical success in the world was extremely, extremely satisfying for me as somebody who's been associated with music, not just as a musician, but also as somebody who's helped share music with the rest of the world as often as I can, either through the MJ show now or as I was a radio jockey back in the day for many years. But it was genuinely such a joy to meet you back then, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you whenever we land up chatting with each other. Before we wrap up for today, I want to ask you, what's next? Are you working on new music right now? What can people expect right now?
So two things that I'm really excited about. I think you interviewed Ila Paliwal sometime back.
That's true. Oh gosh, there you go. There was so much to talk about. And the reason I sort of reconnected with you is because of Ila Paliwal. And I said, and of course, man, how did I miss that? That was incredible. The Vande Mataram video itself blew my mind. And it was such poetic justice. He mentioned this when we spoke, that the song that got so many Indians imprisoned, and the Britishers, when they were here in India, they would not allow Vande Mataram to be sung. For you and her to go back to England in one of the finest studios in England with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and the Royal Choir, and get them to do the song with you. I think that's just perfect. But tell me about your experience of working with her.
So I always want. So I've always. I've collaborated with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra in the past. I've done 2 songs with them in the past, and I love that orchestra, and I love recording at Abbey Road Studios. And it was my dream to actually record a version of Vande Mataram with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, because they're just amazing. They're, in my opinion, is the best orchestra in the world, without a doubt. They're really good, and the number of movies that they've done, like the soundtracks of all these Hans Zimmer movies and John Williams movies and things like that. So basically, I was working on this album with Ila Paliwal, and I told her that this is a concept that I have of recording, the Vande Mataram along with the Royal Philharmonic. Are you interested? And she immediately said, yes, would love to do it. So then we did that. So basically, we, along with a very close friend of mine, a guy called Manoj George, we wrote the entire orchestration for the orchestra. And then I went to London, recorded them, and it was just an amazing experience to actually do that, and to also record with the Voxophonic Choir, which is a very renowned choir in London. So we recorded that, and of course, I'm really, really thrilled with that product, and it's out there, and the video pretty much went viral during this Independence Day, which was really nice. So that was nice. Then the second project that I'm really looking forward to is that along with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, which is a 2-time Nobel Peace Prize winning organization. So what we've done is that we've identified 25 refugees from all over the world who are great musicians, who are great singers and things like that. So we brought them together, and I've been mentoring them for the last 2 months. Every Thursday, I have a mentoring session with them in the morning.
Wow.
And I've been mentoring them in music, and because these are people who are brilliant artists and brilliant musicians, but they've got so many other things to think about before they can even get to thinking about art, because they have to think about their own survival, their homes and their families. Survival, exactly. It's all about survival. So I've been, mentoring them and motivating them and all of that stuff. And we are going to be releasing a song collaborating with all these 25 refugees on the 21st of September. So I'm working on that song right now with them, where they're all recording individually and sending in their parts and things like that. So it's going to be a beautiful collaboration of these amazing refugees. And what I really liked about this particular song is that, when I was working with them on the lyrics, none of them wrote lyrics about darkness. None of them wrote lyrics about I'm in so much of pain. Every single piece, every single word that they came out with is about hope to the world, which was quite amazing.
That's phenomenal. I'm looking forward to hearing that when it does release. Stay in touch with me. Drop me a link. I'll share it with everybody who watches the MJ show. But I got to tell you once again, I'm genuinely so happy to talk to you today, and I have nothing but love, respect, and pride for everything that you've achieved, man. It's phenomenal. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person when times allow. Hopefully sometime later this year, or at least early next year. Hopefully this pandemic will pass and we'll get back to a little bit of normalcy. But for tonight, thank you so much for spending this time with me.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me on your show. Really grateful to you.
Hey, not at all, man. Take care of yourself. And like I said, looking forward to listening to more of your new music. And again, for everybody who's not watched Vande Mataram, I shared that link a couple of days ago. You guys have to see it. It is truly a stunning piece of art, I would say, that has been accomplished by Ricky Cage, the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, and Ila Paliwal. So you guys should go and check that out. And I'm going to give you a whole bunch of links in the description of this video when it goes up on the YouTube channel of The MJ Show. Subscribe to that, hit the bell icon, and also subscribe to Ricky Cage's YouTube channel. There's some amazing videos on that, some great live performances of him performing all across the world. It'll blow your mind, the kind of stuff that this man has done. If you've not seen it, you should go and check it out right now. But thank you, Ricky. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's Ricky Cage. I'm Mihir Joshi. This is The MJ Show. I'll see you guys very, very soon. Good night.